Today we are continuing a series called Facing the Future. And we have one last message, and it is a man's message. Believe me, it's one of the most famous stories in all of the Bible, okay? It's one that most people know. Even if you've never read the Bible, you've probably heard of this story. If you haven't heard of it, that's okay, because you will get ready to. In fact, it's what the book of Daniel is known for, Daniel in the lion's den. And if there's ever a story that I was scared of to tell, it is Daniel in the lion's den. And the reason why I'm scared of it, I don't have a phobia about lions per se, but I have made so many cat jokes that if I ever end up in a lion's den, I have a feeling I would get eaten pretty quick. But anyway, so today we're going to talk about Daniel in the lion's den. What is that about? What happened in the life of Daniel? We're going to kind of wrap up this series, understanding that that's not the end of the book of Daniel. Daniel actually has two parts to it. It has the storyline. That's the part we've been covering. Daniel also got to do some other amazing things. So if you finish reading the book of Daniel, you will find out that Daniel had some of the most amazing prophecies that any prophet has ever had. Not only was he an amazing man, and today you're going to find out how awesome that he actually was, he also was one of the greatest prophets who ever lived. Some of his prophecies have yet to be fulfilled. It's unbelievable, the prophecies that Daniel has in his book. We're not going to cover that, but I just want to make sure that you knew about it. So what I want you to do is I want you to turn to Daniel chapter 6. I'm going to kind of brief you just a minute on where we've been. We've been doing this for 4 weeks. That in no way does justice to the whole book of Daniel, but we've been pulling out some snapshots to say, hey, how can God help us in our life through the life of Daniel? And we found that Daniel lived at a time in ancient times where the nation of Israel had sinned against God, and he had raised up another empire in the world called Babylon. Okay, Babylon is one of the huge ancient empires of the world. It's actually modern-day Iraq, and they had a new king. His name was Nebuchadnezzar, and he was angry with Israel because they kind of snubbed him, and so he busted down their wall, took their great artifacts, and especially stuff from their temples, and he took the best and the brightest of their young people. And one of the young people that he took was Daniel as a young man. And so he comes to Babylon, and we get to see many things, and we've talked through many stories that Daniel purposed in his heart, and he had some friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that got thrown into a fiery furnace, and God saved them. And then we took a look at the pride of King Nebuchadnezzar last week. And over time, Daniel was there his entire life. King Nebuchadnezzar eventually died. And one of his relatives, we believe it's a relative, it's controversial as to who the next king was, whether it be Nebuchadnezzar's son or Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, but he did some things that really offended God. You can read that in Daniel chapter 5, and you will see the fall of the nation of Babylon. And they fell to another empire. The empire they fell to is Persia. Now, Babylon is modern-day Iraq. Persia is modern-day Iran. So you can see that we're still having the struggles, even in the world today, that happened way back then. So that's just kind of a side note. And as Persia came, they had a king named Darius, or Darius, if you want to say it the wrong way. It's kind of like pecan. But I call him Darius. And so Darius was their king, and he came in, and he set up a new empire, and that's kind of where we pick up. A lot of time has passed. There's a new empire. Anybody ever had a time where you work for a company? I used to work for banks, and one thing you find out about a bank is don't get too used to the way things are, okay? And when new banks take over, you know what they change? They change the administration, okay? So if you've been there a long time, like Daniel has, when the new people come in, you might get axed, and in this case, literally axed, okay? They didn't just fire you like they do many people. I remember when I worked for Central Fidelity, and Wachovia took over them. This is years ago, right? Some of these names don't even exist now. I remember a lady that worked there. She actually grew up with my dad. In fact, before my dad met my mom, my dad actually dated this lady. That's a long time. And she had worked there her entire life. And when Wachovia took over, they let her go. Unbelievable, right? I mean, she had worked there her whole life. I want you to kind of feel that as we get into the story of Daniel. What does that feel like when you've done something your whole life, and now all of a sudden the rules change? A new kingdom is in here. A new administration has come in. Daniel chapter 6, verse 1, if you want to turn with me. Daniel 6, verse 1. It pleases Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom. He's setting up his people to help him. He was obviously good at delegating. Verse 2. With 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. So if you understand what's going on here, he's setting up his empire and he's saying, hey, this guy was obviously had, Darius, he had really good leadership. Because what he decided to do was, he decided to say, hey, I can't do all this myself. I need some people that can really govern. And he looked for the best and the brightest. And he brought them together and he said, hey, I need to make sure my kingdom is financially viable. Wouldn't that be great if our country would do that instead of just playing politics? That we would actually go, hey, what is financially the best? And he brought in the best and the brightest. That's what the satraps were. And then over the satraps, what he did was he set administrators, which meant you're going to, the 120 people that are going to rule the world, there's going to be 3 people over them, and guess who was one of them? Daniel. That's pretty amazing, right? I mean, that's an amazing career to say you went from one administration to another. Understanding that most people don't survive that. You understand what I'm saying? If you were incompetent in the old one and it was just the old buddy system at the old empire, you wouldn't have made the new system, but yet this man stood out into another empire. In fact, verse 3, here's what happens to Daniel. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. You know what that is? That's like being prime minister. That's a more modern term, but this is what we're seeing. Darius said, hey, I am the king, and I have a lot of responsibilities, but I want you to do all the work. No, I'm just playing. But what he's basically said was, he goes, look, I understand, I need a great administrator, and Daniel, you're the best that there is in the entire world. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to turn over the administrative abilities of the whole world to you, and I'm going to be king. So the only person you answer to is me. That's pretty amazing, right? Do you know how old Daniel was here? When we started, he was probably either a teenager or a very, very young adult. He had went through a lot. At this point in his life, he was in his 80s. Anybody have a change that takes place? Like maybe you might not be 80, but you're getting up in years, and you get all of a sudden administrations change, and what would you do? Daniel got the greatest blessing of his life to say, hey, you weren't just top, because he was next to the king in both administrations in Babylon, and now when he moves over to Persia, he's now number 1 next to the king himself. It's pretty amazing, right? I'm going to tell you, we've probably never met someone more successful than Daniel. He is at the top of his game, and he is going out to leave a lasting legacy. It looks like everything is working out pretty good for Daniel. But here's kind of where the story takes a little bit of a twist. And as we wrap up, I'm going to tell you, this is what happens next is something that if we learn this, our lives will be blessed. If we don't, I'm going to tell you what, you'll never have a blessing in your life. You'll never really understand. You might reach a level of success, but you'll never be significant. This is why Daniel is significant, what he faces next. Verse 4. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. But they were unable to do so. They could not find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. You understand that when somebody gets promoted, does anybody know how this feels? You ever had a friend that was promoted over you? Like you're all doing the same job and then somebody gets to be a higher position? And it's like good for them. They're making more money. They have more power. They're really doing well. But then you're kind of like, they're standing out. How does that feel, right? Anybody understand how that feels? And do you understand that the people that are kind of lower in the organization, how they feel? This is how it is. They're kind of out to get you. I love what my father-in-law says. He always says, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not after me, okay? And that's true here, right? When you reach that level of success, you can believe, and if you've ever worked for a government agency, okay, anybody work for the government? Then you'll get this, that there are those out there that are going, hey, my job is to sabotage you because I don't like the fact that they promoted you. And these guys are after him. They're looking for something, but they couldn't find anything. So here's what they did, verse 5. Finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God. These guys are looking, they're putting him under a microscope. They see Daniel and they go, we need to tear him down, and you don't get to rise too high. In fact, this is really normal human behavior. In fact, it's even animalistic behavior. That when one person gets ahead of other people and they reach a level of success, other people and actually other animals will pull them back down. We see this, I don't know, anybody like crabbing? If you've ever been crabbing, then you'll understand this. If you put crabs in a bucket and one of them tries to get out, like they'll reach up over top of it, you know what the other crabs will do? They'll grab them and pull them back in. If you put them in a pot, now I don't know if we got PETA people, sorry, but if you like crabs, it's worth it, right? But you put them in a pot and you're boiling them, right? And when one of them finally reaches up to the top and they're ready to get out of the pot, you know why they don't get to get out if you put them all in there? It's because one of them will reach up, believe it or not, you watch it, and they'll grab them and they'll keep pulling them back in. That's exactly what's happening here. Daniel got up. You see, here's the problem with success. If you're not careful, if you want a faith that lasts, that's what we want to talk about today. I'm going to give you a couple things. The first thing you got to understand today is this, is that when God raises you up, that's great, but you can expect that people will tear you down. Let me ask you a question. Is that your expectation? Or are you surprised by that? You know what I mean? You might think I'm being cynical, like, oh no, that's not true. People would be happy for me. Is that what you think? You think people are happy when you do it? I just asked you a question. Let me ask you a question. You ever seen somebody promoted and then around the water cooler you're going, how did that guy get it, right? Right? You were in line for the promotion, but they got it. Or you were thinking of yourself for it and they got it and you're thinking, I think, right? I mean, if you study history, then you'll know the whole thing about Europe. That's all that happened in Europe for years and years and years was one country would get more powerful, one country would have more money, and then the rest of the countries would gang up on them and beat them down, right? I mean, that's kind of the history of Europe. If you want European history, that's all you need to know. Anytime one empire went up, the other ones didn't get with him, the other three would get together, and then they just beat up the other guy. Is that how we do? So you know that's true, right? There's a side note that says, hey, watch jealousy, watch envy. Don't try to pull people down. Celebrate with them. But we understand how that feels, right? I mean, but think about it. When you're trying to make changes in your life, this is a huge deal. You have to understand when you start applying godly principles to your life and you think that, hey, this life is going well, you can expect to be attacked by other people because sometimes they're going to project their hurt onto you. Sometimes it's because you're bragging and you just need to shut up, okay? We don't want to hear about it, right? I mean, like when your life is going good, anybody feel like that? Like, hey, when one person is losing weight and somebody else isn't, and you keep telling them how good life is for you and your diet, I don't want to hear about your diet, right? I mean, everybody feel like that? Like, just stop telling me about it. I don't want to hear it, right? Or I don't want to see it. And we feel the need to tear them down. That's just one thought of it. I know when some people have tried to do financial peace, and it seems like, hey, you're trying to get that victory in your life. It's amazing how that you find out, hey, when you're living life different, other people will look at that and they'll pull you back into that. Oh, like, why are you living like that? Why are you doing that? Come on, man. You be like one of us, right? You're trying to overcome an addiction. It's amazing how that it's almost like they'll put the alcohol in your hand sometimes, you know? It's like, come on, right? But it's when you try to get ahead, just expect that it'll be torn down. The higher the level of leadership, expect it. Some of the biggest babies in the world are pastors. I can say that because I meet with many of them, and I are one, okay? So I get it, right? I mean, I get it that when they gather, they can be babies about this. Like, how could people do this to us? And how could people say that about us? And I wanted you to write down a scripture just to have as a reference, because if you're not ready for this, I'm going to tell you, your world's going to get rocked because your expectations are wrong. James chapter 3 and verse 1, it says this, If you desire to be a teacher, this is basically what it says. It's a noble thing. That's how it says it in one thing. It's a noble thing to even have ambition. It's a good thing to want to be a teacher. It's a good thing to want to be a leader. But just realize this, that you will be judged more strictly. Do you understand? Nobody teaches that, right? And the reason why I say that is you're shocked when somebody falsely accuses you. Is that how it is for you? You're shocked when you realize they're looking at you under a microscope. Let me ask you a question. How would you stand up under a microscope? Believe me, you'll find out. You get promoted, right? Get the things that you really want out of life. If you have more money, if you have more prestige, if you have more leadership, if things start going well for you and God starts blessing your life, you can expect there's going to be some people, and I believe Satan is a force behind some of that. But here's the thing. This is right. This is part of life. You can expect that people will start to tear you down. Here's what happened. Your life will be under a microscope. What will they find? You know what they found in the life of Daniel? Nothing. Is that what they find for you? Or would they find something? And see, the thing is, some of us as leaders, we blame people when we're put under the microscope and they actually find stuff. Well, everybody would be like that. Yeah, you're right, but you're a leader. You're not everybody. Get it? Some of us, that's how we say, right? Well, if anybody else was put under the microscope, they would find stuff. I beg to differ when you read the story of Daniel. You know what they found on Daniel? Well, he prays to his God. That's what they found. They sent in their private investigators. Anybody ever been private investigated? My life's been put under a microscope. I know what it feels like. When people are mad at you, people are against you, you better believe you better have dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. You better have your bylaws in order because they're reading them and they're trying to find ways to get you. Did you think that's not the way it's supposed to be? Oh, that's not just me. That's everybody, right? And if you live for God, Satan likes nothing better than to tear you down. And as Daniel, God's man, gets the head of another empire of the world, Satan comes at him with these other people, and he stirs up their resentments, and they project their hurts onto Daniel's and their failures onto Daniel. And what they find is they say the only thing we can accuse him of is he loves God. So how do we work that angle? And that's the exact angle that they work. Believe me, they did their job well. These guys were smart at politics. And so what they did was they came to King Darius, who loved Daniel, right? So they couldn't just down Daniel. So what they did was they did like a lot of stuff that goes on in government. It's kind of behind the scenes. Let me get you to sign this thing. And they came to Darius and they said, hey, you want to know what the problem is in the world, Darius? Religion. You want to know, and I have a feeling Darius understood this because we don't even have to go back to ancient times. Iraq and Iran, imagine that, fighting over religion. Anybody recognize that? Anybody in the military and been over there to fight these wars where you're like, you got two sets of people and they haven't changed in 3,000 years and they never will, right? Because we got Shiites and we got Sunnis and they just believe different, right? Because somebody was born somewhere and to us it doesn't make sense, but it does to them, right? And they go, Darius, you know what the problem is in the world? It's all this religion stuff. They're all praying different, and that's what everybody's fighting over. You know what you need to do? Just knock off the prayer stuff. And then they say a little different. They go, let them pray to you if they're going to pray to anybody. And Darius is like, man, that's a good idea. And so he signs it. Not thinking what that really meant, right? He didn't read the fine print. I think that Darius was a little bit like me. He's a big picture guy, and he just didn't want the details. And he's like, no problem. Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, we're going to put a little teeth to it, Darius, because we want this stuff to knock off, so here's what we're going to do. If you do pray to your God, lion's den. Sounds good. Because that way we have an example. Here's the thing. You'll never have to throw anybody in the lion's den because nobody's going to be stupid enough to pray now, right? Because you done said it, and they know what the lion's den means. Now, the lion's den, I was thinking, I used to go to the circus as a kid. It was one of my favorite things, and I know everybody's got their opinions of the animals in the circus. But my favorite was Gunther Gable-Williams. I remember, anyway, that was my favorite. And he was the lion tamer, and that's how I kind of viewed it, right? He would get in there, and he'd put them on his back, and he'd get in the cage with them and lay down with them. And he was actually nice to the animals. I know not all of them are, but he was. Amazing guy. That's not it. They have a lion's den that's not for entertainment like we think of entertainment. What they did is they would go through the world and they would find these creatures and they would put them in caves. It's not just lions. They would do other things too. But they would have these beasts and they would make a lion's den and then they would throw in they were sick, but they were barbaric. You think most of these people were warriors. They would throw in live animals and watch the lions just rip them apart, right? And their favorite thing to do was to starve the animal and then throw something in. You get the idea? And so they're like, you won't want to die like that. That's a lion's den. And so Darius signed off on it, not really thinking through the details. And then they came to him. And if you read in chapter 6, you're going to see they came back to King Darius and they said, hey, we watched. And so they put out the news and they said, hey, we're going to watch Daniel. Now, a lot of people think maybe Daniel didn't know what was going on, but I beg to differ. Let's take a look. Daniel chapter 6, and we'll skip down to verse 10. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the window was open towards Jerusalem. You see this part, right? When he heard that the decree was published. That means that Daniel was not like Darius. He wasn't just a big picture guy. Daniel was a detailed guy. Daniel was the greatest administrator that the world's ever seen. He not just one empire, two, right? You're not talking about a dumb man. You're not talking about a man that's lived to be 80 years old and didn't understand politics. But he looked and he said, after he heard that it was published and he knew that they were looking at him through his window 3 times, right? You see that? 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God. This is the main part, and I want to make sure you underline this. Just as he had done before. So, there's many things Daniel could have done, right? Daniel could have closed the window. Daniel could have, like, I can pray, and right now I'm praying, and you don't even know it, right? I can keep my eyes open, and nobody knows I'm praying. You know what he did? He kept praying just like he did before. Can I tell you how he didn't pray? He didn't go out on the street corner and publicize it. He didn't go and yell at King Darius and hold up protest signs. He didn't stand up for his rights. Just being honest. You know what he did? He didn't change something. And I want you to get it today because you might not realize why this is so important. See, he's not just making a point. He's protecting something in his life that's the most important thing that he does. And if you get it, your life will be blessed. If you don't, your life will never be blessed. Understand? This principle that I'm telling you right now, it will make you or break you. I cannot overemphasize it. Here's how important it was to Daniel, one of the most godly men that's ever lived next to the Lord Jesus Christ. You know there's no recorded sin in the life of Daniel? I didn't say Daniel didn't sin. That's a fact. Jesus Christ died for Daniel too. There's no recorded sin in the life of Daniel. That's pretty big, right? Not many people like that, if anybody. It means that he was only promoted, but you know why I think that he was able to do that? Because he understood something that's the number one daily habit that will change your life. It will make you or break you. It will bless you or curse you. And here's what the principle is. Kneeling to pray is what gives you strength to stand. You want to write it down? Kneeling to pray is what gives you strength to stand. That's how Daniel did it. How Daniel went from empire to empire, why God was able to use him, why God was able to do what he did next in the life of Daniel. Because you might think, the miracles that you've seen so far, you might think that's what it's about, but it's not. There's something way bigger in the book of Daniel. It's the second part. And that only came through prayer and meditation and humility in the life of Daniel. You see, Daniel wasn't trying to make a point when he prayed. Prayer was the point. It was so important that what he said was, he said, I would rather go to the lion's den than to give up this daily habit. That's how big it is. Spending time with God. Did you know that's the most important thing you'll ever do on a daily basis? If you want victory in your life, the greatest habit, the number one habit that you have to have is what Daniel had right here. And it didn't happen. See, Daniel didn't start doing it when he read that and said, oh, I got to make a point. I got to go pray in public. I got to have a public gathering. I got to go meet around the flagpole or whatever. I'm not saying that's bad. What I'm telling you is that's not where it started for Daniel. This is a personal relationship with God, and he said this. He's like, nothing is more important than this daily habit. Just like he done before. It's not something new. He wasn't doing it to make a political point. He was doing it because it's the most important thing. I want to give you a couple things that might help you. At the first of the year, we had a series, and we covered a passage of Scripture where Jesus taught just about this. You can write it down. It's in Luke chapter 10. I just read that in my quiet time recently. Luke chapter 10, Jesus had been doing miracles, and he comes to some friend's house, Mary and Martha. You've probably heard the story. Or if you haven't, that's okay. You can read it in Luke chapter 10. And as Jesus comes there, Martha is really busy doing some work, and Mary, the sister, comes and sits on the couch with Jesus, and Martha basically tells Jesus, hey, tell Mary to come and help me do more work because I'm kind of busy right now. And Jesus says, Martha, you're worried about too many things when only one thing is needed, the thing, right? Mary spending time with me, that's the most important thing you will ever do. In fact, if you don't get around to anything else, that's the most important thing you'll ever do in life. You see that? That's what Jesus is teaching. And Martha was kind of like, I can't believe you said that, right? I can't believe you reprimanded me. I'm doing so much. I'm so busy. I don't have time to spend time with Jesus. Are you starting to see what he's saying? In Matthew chapter 6, if you want to write that down, he teaches us about prayer. And he says, I can see that you're worried about many things, right? You're worried about what you're going to eat and what you're going to drink and what you're going to wear. You're going to worry about how you're going to live, right? Right? Because we don't have food, we're going to die. We don't have this, we're going to have this. And he's like, you're worried about so many things, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these other things will be added to you as well. You know what he's saying? The number one thing, the number one habit is to spend time with God. Can I challenge you with something today? Do you? Can I tell you the number one problem that we have? The number one thing that's missing from our lives? I know because it was missing from my life too. Do you? Every day? Do you never miss? You want to be successful like Daniel? You want to be significant like Daniel? Can I tell you what it means? Never miss. There is nothing. I can repeat this until I cannot overemphasize this. Spending time with God, there is nothing more important. You will never have the power of God in your life if you don't get this. If you think it's about an event and a big moment, then you are going to be disillusioned because Daniel was a success not because he prayed one time. It was because he never stopped praying. Get it? He did, hey, if I don't get to anything else, sometimes you have to have your world rocked. I know a couple of years ago I had my world rocked, and that was the day I learned I cannot miss this. Because you think you know what life's about. You think you know what life's going to throw at you. Anybody ever woke up to realize you don't? That you don't know how life's going to go? That life doesn't always go like you think it will? How do you face the challenges of life? Your plan? Let me ask you a question. When you're in crisis, do you pray or do you plan? And when you're in crisis, do you do or do you seek God? Believe me, if you're not meeting with him daily, I can tell you what you'll do. All right? I can tell you there's a lot of people that would say this because I understand because I'm in the same boat as you guys. Believe me, I know I only work 2 hours a week, but on Sundays, right? But you guys are hard, right? I mean, you guys are hard on me. No, I'm just playing. Pastors do it too, right? I don't have time for my quiet time. I got to go be there for people, right? I'm not retired. I can't go sit out on my back porch and read until I feel like it, right? Some of you retired people are mad at me right now because you're like, that's not what life is like. I got a lot of responsibility too. Besides, my kids are bringing their kids, right? And I'm having to help them. Okay, I got you, right? We all have it, right? It's not going to happen, but I understand sometimes you feel like that when you got all these kids and stuff, and I know I'm stressing this point, but I'm telling you, something that I'm learning in my life, something that Jesus taught, something that Daniel was saying, something that if you go through the principles of the Bible, the number one lesson that there is, do not miss this. I'll pull out my phone right now, I can show you that for over 583 days I haven't missed. But it's not for the reason you think. I didn't do it so I could go 583 days. I don't even know, except for the phone tells me. I did it because I can't make it through the day. When God knocked me off my feet and I sat in the chair for a day and just spent time with God because I just don't think I can go on, right? He's going to show you who's God. And there's going to come a time in your life when God's going to knock you off your feet. The question is this: are you going to turn to Him? Are you going to understand this principle? Because the daily surrender that Daniel had, he understood it doesn't matter. You see, Daniel wasn't doing it to make a point to these guys. He was doing it because it's the number one thing in life. Now, some of you guys are going, hey, I don't really know how to do that. I mean, I've spent time with God and I fall asleep. And if we're real honest, that's where a lot of people feel. I don't know how to read the Bible. I read it and it doesn't make sense. Then what I'd recommend is this. I'm not saying you have to use our plan or that my plan is better than everybody else's, but we do have, we'll give you the principles of the Bible and we'll give you a practical plan. If you go back to the first of the year, we had 2 habits, habits 4 and 5, of 7 habits of highly effective followers of Christ, right? 7 habits of a follower of Jesus that we did at the first of the year. Habits 4 and 5, we say how to pray and how to read the Bible. Very simple plan. You can do it. It would take 10, 15 minutes a day. Can I tell you something? If you don't have 10 or 15 minutes to spend with God a day, don't call yourself a follower. That's 1% of your waking hours. You'll never have God's direction for your life. We all pray, and some of us are shaking our hands at God, and I'm not throwing guilt at you today. I'm helping wake you up today to tell you why you're not hearing from God. You're not hearing from God because you are worried about many things when only one thing is needed. You need Jesus. You see, you don't need more money, you need Jesus. You see, you don't need what you think you need Jesus. And if you don't spend time with Him, He'll never speak to you. See? And the posture here is important. The reason why we use the word kneeling, it's sometimes very important to get on your knees to show it. But you know, I know people, I like to say other people, but I know myself. I can get on my knees and be more prideful than anybody else. In fact, I could get up here right now and I could kneel before God in front of you guys, and it would be the biggest pride-filled moment of my entire life to show you how humble I am. If you're showing people how humble you are, you're not humble. You get it? It's not about posture, although that helps. It's the posture of the heart. How do you pray? You know, it took God really crushing me to go, are you ready to listen to me? Are you ready to say you don't have a clue how this universe works? Are you here to say you don't have a clue what to do next? That's what He did in my life, right? And as He knocks you off your feet, what do? He builds you back up. He lifts you up. Remember we talked about that last week? As God humbles you, He didn't do it to be mean. He goes, if you humble yourself, I will lift you up. I'm telling you. Man, this is going to change your life. When you learn this, you will have the number one thing. You cannot help but be blessed if you do this, I'm telling you. There's no way, if you went, hey, you know what? If I start my day, and I do this now, right? My morning routine is the most important piece of my entire life if I ever want my brain to be straight. And it's why I can't miss. I know some people go, well, you don't have to wake up at 5 in the morning. Well, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm at the hospital at 5 a.m. I get up at 4. This is more important than anything you'll ever do. I'm telling you. I'm not saying it out of pride. What I'm telling you is I can't do it. I'm going to mess everything up, and I've messed up so many things that I realize now, if I don't spend time with God every day, I can't get through the day. Does that make sense? Man, when you get this, it's going to change your life. Kneeling to pray is what gives you strength to stand. Some of you guys, you are getting knocked down. Before you stand back up, get on your knees. And I'm going to tell you what, God's going to lift you up in a way that you've never had before in your life. We're going to see how it works out for Daniel. Okay, you ready? Before we go here, let me tell you what happens. They see him pray, they run to King Darius, and they say, King Darius, Daniel prayed. And I think King Darius had one of those moments where his heart just sunk. The most powerful man in the world, and he cannot save Daniel. You want to know why? If you want to know why, there's a cultural thing, and you can learn it from the movie Aladdin. Okay, I've been promoting Aladdin too much. But you can, because Aladdin comes in the Persian Empire. Maybe you didn't realize the framework for Aladdin, but Aladdin is a Persian empire. And if you listen to the story of Aladdin, what you'll hear that the king says, hey, my daughter has to marry a prince because I made an edict, the edict of the king. And because the king is flawless in Persian empires, anybody believe that? Anybody married and going, I don't think so, right? He made an edict, it cannot be changed. That's the problem in the Persian Empire. That if you made a rash decision and you signed off on it, and this is what these people that were against Daniel understood, right? If you make an edict, you can't change it because you can't change your mind because you're like God. And when you wrote that down, now it's like God's word and it can never be changed. So guess what? King Darius, Daniel prayed. And I'm not sure, but I think your edict says he has to be thrown into the lion's den. My prime minister? I don't want him to, right? And he goes to Daniel, and if you listen to the story, King Darius is apologizing to Daniel. Daniel, I'm sorry, right? Daniel, I don't want to do this, but here's what I think, maybe, right? I mean, he doesn't say it this way. He says, your God can save you. What it really means is maybe your God can save you because you're a godly man. You're one of the best people I've ever met. You have the more integrity than anybody I've ever met, Daniel. I can't believe we're going to do this. And he has him thrown into the lion's den. Most of the time when you're thrown into the lion's den, now it's dark in there, so they put a big stone over top because nobody needs to get close to this thing. These lions haven't been fed. They're there to eat you. King Darius has a restless night. Needless to say. It says he doesn't eat. You know it's bad when the king doesn't eat, right? He doesn't eat the whole night, and he rushes out before it's even light the next day, and he has this thing removed, and he calls out to Daniel, are you there, right? He's looking for, it's kind of one of those where he's like, hey, are you there? Because I don't really want to look, because I'm sure you're just everywhere, right? Or is there anything left of him? Here's Daniel's answer, Daniel chapter 6, verse 22. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done anything wrong before you, your majesty. You know what I didn't notice here, and I was listening to Chuck Swindoll recently, and he mentioned this. I did quite a bit of research on this message series, and he pointed out something I never thought of, and I thought, that would be me, right? Think of the geography in this case. Darius comes and says, hey, are you okay? And Daniel's talking to him, but where is he? In the lion's den. Can I tell you something? If Darius was talking to me, I'd be like, I'll tell you what, get me out of the lion's den and then we can sit down and have a conversation, right? But they had this long conversation and Daniel is in the lion's den. You hearing me? Do you understand what God can do? I don't know if that's lost on you. Daniel is preaching his message from the lion's den, right? It's not, God bless me and then I'll serve you. It's, I can actually preach from the most dangerous place there is because God can walk on the things that we fear the most. Are you starting to see it? When Jesus walks on the water, right? He don't calm the storm, he walks on the storm. He's in the situation. Whatever situation you think is the most horrible thing you could ever face, God has a message that comes straight from it, and Daniel gets it, and he speaks to the king. You could very easily learn the wrong lessons in this series, but this is the message. Verse 23, here's what happens next. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. It wasn't Daniel frantic to get out of the den. Daniel had learned how to live in whatever circumstance God put him in. Isn't that something? And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because you want the answer to life? Because he had trusted in his God. As I wrap up this message, as we wrap up this series, as you're wrapping up your life, there's something you need to understand here. And if you get it, it's going to be amazing for you. If you don't, not so amazing. You could learn some very wrong lessons about Daniel. Can I tell you what Daniel's not about? The lion's den. It's not even about the miracle. It's about a principle that you have to get today. I want to give you the last principle from the life of Daniel, and it's this. When you do what's right, you can trust God with the results. Not because God shuts the mouths of the lions. Well, that's what we like, right? God, if you shut the mouths of the lions like you did for Daniel, that isn't the point. And if you think it is, you go back and listen to this series, you'll get, I don't want to re-preach all that stuff, but I want to make sure you know that. Why? Because sometimes God doesn't. The point of the story is found in Romans 8, and we used it, the same thought process with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were thrown into the fiery furnace, remember? And we said, be careful that you think that it's about that they got out of the fiery furnace. That's not the point. In fact, we went on to say, hey, Hebrews chapter 11, one of my favorite passages of Scripture in the Bible, where it said, hey, some were saved. Some though, died. Some were burned up. Some, the lions ate them. Right? The martyrs that shed their blood, the lions actually ate them. This isn't about which end it gets. By the way, if I can help you with something today, the death rate's 1 per person. We're all going to make it. So eventually, you don't make it out alive. Did you know? I mean, yes, Jesus could come back for a generation, but we've watched many die, right? So the death rate's 1 per person. You're not going to make it. There's bad things that happen in this life. That's not the point. When you do the right thing, you can trust God with the results. You see, it's more important than you think. This is more important. This is significance. Daniel's 80 years old. He's going to die someday. I'm going to tell you what, getting ate up by lions, that's pretty epic. But that's not the end of his day. That's not the point. It's what God wants to do in your life. And some of us, what we're saying is, if I have to face the lions, then I'm not trusting God with that, right? I'm not going to pray anymore. Is that what you do? What keeps you from your quiet time? Some of us, I just don't think God's going to do what I told him to do, right? I prayed, and God didn't come out like a genie in the bottle, right? Is that how it is? Or do you do the right thing and trust God with the results? When you do the right thing. When you don't do the right thing, how's that going to work for you, right? Romans chapter 8, you know what it says? It says, God works together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. That God will work all things together for good. That means all the things in your life. It doesn't mean all things are good. It means that he can use them for good, any more than all ingredients in food are good in and of themselves. You get the picture? So it's not just about what happens. It's learning to trust God with this process. The reason why God was able to use Daniel, and if you get this today, it's going to change your life. If you don't, it won't. You know, the other thing it's not about? It's not about revenge. I didn't finish the story because the story goes like this. King Darius, after he pulls Daniel out, he brings in the other administrators that put down Daniel, that tried to get Daniel, that made him sign to eat it. And he said, throw them, I hate to even share this part, but it's in the Bible, and their families into the lion's den. And I don't know if the angel that shut the mouths of the lions was just tired, but they all got ate. You know, there's some people, believe it or not, and I don't know why they would do this, but they said that the reason why the lions didn't eat Daniel was they weren't hungry. But they didn't have a hard time when they threw about 12 people in there. They ate them all, like that. And you know, some people were like, "Oh man, they finally got what they deserve." That's not the point of this story. I used to think it was, right? People did me wrong, and then God's going to get them back one day. Is that what you think the story is about? If you do, you are missing it. You see, if Daniel had thought that way, God could have never done what he did with Daniel next. And if you're thinking that way, God could never use you. If you're blaming other people in your life, if you're holding on to those grudges in your life, do you know that when you look at the life of Daniel, I told you there's no recorded sin in his life. There's also no recorded time where he asked for revenge. He didn't ask Darius to do that. He never put them down. He never said one word. He submitted to what was going to happen in his life, and he trusted God. And I don't know that Daniel even wanted that. Jesus, when he taught on prayer in Matthew 6, he said he spent a lot of time on one part of it to say, If you don't forgive other people when they sin, your heavenly Father won't forgive you. But if you forgive other people when they sin, your heavenly Father will help you. I can tell you it's the number one barrier that's going to destroy you. If you're focused on, after you get out of the lion's den, getting back at other people, you will never have the blessing of God in your life. Daniel did, and let me tell you why he's so significant. I only told you half of the story of Daniel. After this moment in Daniel's life, he became the chief magi of the world. Do you know how much he changed the world? Do you know how much recorded prophecy is in the book of Daniel? Not in any other book, even Revelation doesn't compare to the prophecies that Daniel had from ancient times to the life of Jesus Christ. I'll give you one thing, that he prophesied almost the date that Jesus Christ would come into the world. Did you know that? And years later, this is just one prophecy just to show you something that occurred. Magi came from the east. Did you ever hear that? Magi. Now, there's only one other place we've ever heard of Magi, right? The chief Magi. And they had a version of the Bible in Persia. Did you know that? Called the Septuagint. Who put it there? Hundreds of years later, when Jesus Christ was born, Magi came from the east. And they worshiped the Christ because they saw his star in the east. You remember? You look at the book of Daniel, he almost predicts to the date, the year of the triumphal entry of Jesus Christ. I could go on and on and on and tell you what God allowed this man to see. You know why he allowed him to see it? It's right here. You know what God could do in your life if you'd let him? If you'd make your life about this, instead of trying so hard, if we would kneel, if we would expect that people will tear you down, but get your eyes off of those people and get them on God. You starting to hear me today? You see, you're worried about that they're tearing you down, and you've been defined by how people have been criticizing you, but you're not who people say you are. You're who God says you are. And the day you get that, you're not worried about these people. You know why? Because when you kneel and prayer, you're going to be able to stand, even when people criticize you. Somebody's being defined by words of people. That you were up here, and then somebody said one word, and it brought you down here, right? Because you don't have your eyes on God yet, but you will, right? And when you get it right, here's what happens. When you do the right thing, when you get your eyes off of them, you can trust God with how he'll use your life. And Daniel is a lasting testament for all of time that God can do it. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't pretend to know how to tell you to apply this to your life, only that I think God will do his work, okay? So can I pray for you guys today? Let's stand for prayer.